In today's video, we're packing for a travel job, shooting a corporate testimonial, and I'll tell you my cautionary tale about using a media pass with Delta. So the shoot is for an e-commerce company, and it's going to be a two-man band operation, hiring one other crew member locally.
I'm always torn if I should bring the good Sackler tripod on a travel job, or if I should just bring actual travel tripod. That guy makes my life a lot easier. I cannot, unfortunately, fit my 6x collapsible frame. The pieces are just too long. This is really the maximum length of case that's easy to travel with, because if you put it on those rollers in the airport, it still fits through all the doors easily, and that would not be true for anything longer. So these rags, I'm probably gonna be hanging from C-stand arms, audio stuff, gimbal, spotlight mount. Tubes are another thing that unfortunately I can't really fly with. The Amaran T4C. I have two of those and they're great, but they're also just too long to fit in this case. So not everything that I want to use can come with me on the airplane, but that's the way she goes. Let's go to Texas. Another successful outing for the extremely janky self-made media pass. $50 per case, so 100 in total. This one obviously I just printed with an at-home printer and then repurposed a plastic sleeve. The only airline that ever gives me any trouble is JetBlue. You need to email them an application 3 days prior to your flight with a photo of your media pass and the number of bags you're flying with. And when I have done this in the past, they did approve me. But you have to go through that extra step of remembering to email them to get those sweet, sweet discounts. The best airline for media rates, as far as I know, is Southwest, because everybody, media or not, gets their first 2 bags free. However, if they're overweight, Southwest will charge you $150 to $200 per bag. But with your media pass, those are also free. I typically fly either Delta, United, or American, and all 3 of those have pretty much an identical policy, which is that each individual bag is $50 instead of the hundreds it could cost for an overweight, oversized, 3rd, 4th, or 5th bag. But not all agents treat these rules the same, and we will get to that a little bit later in the video. So I hired my friend Chris to second shoot and supply a lot of the lighting and grip for this, since he's already based in Texas.
Gotta be repping.
So just one interview today, and then some interactive B-roll with her, as well as some B-roll of the space that she designed, her office. The only real hurdle when setting up for this interview was the fact that the space we were filming in was very small, and we had very limited options for framing. We preferred this corner because it allowed us to open up that door and get a lot of depth behind her. To start with the lighting, we keyed with Chris's Nan light and a light dome. Then I hung my quarter grid from a C-stand arm to just soften the light a bit more. Then Chris taped up the black side of this Ultra Bounce to give some negative fill, which actually wasn't really even negative fill. It was more just cutting that light that would have otherwise been coming through that window on her shadow side. He also had, I think, an Amaran light of some kind, just to sprinkle a little bit of hard light on that bookshelf. For audio, I ran a shotgun into a boom pole into the C70, and then I ran my lav into the C70 as well, which was the Deity Theos system. And it honestly sounded pretty bad because she was wearing a thick, tweed jacket. And I knew I was going to be relying on the boom anyway, and this was just kind of a backup, so I didn't take the time to refine the placement of it. There could be an argument made that I shouldn't have even taken the time to lav her up if I knew I wasn't going to be using that audio, but a little part of me just always likes to have a backup when it comes to audio, even if it's a bad backup. If I intended to actually use this audio, I could have taken some time to maybe use some medical tape and put it on her chest, but I did not feel like being that invasive, considering I knew I was going to be choosing the boom in the edit anyway. For B-roll, I mostly used my 24-105 on a gimbal, which was really pushing this RS3 Pro to its limits. The motors just failed and turned off a couple of times. I would just do the old turn it off and turn it back on trick, which seemed to work. But yeah, there were quite a few times when the gimbal just said, no thank you, too much weight, goodbye. So this is definitely not an ideal setup, but we had to be out of that location by, I think, 2 p.m. It was a really short shoot, so I had to be efficient with my B-roll and minimize lens swaps. Whereas typically on the gimbal, I'm jumping between my 24 and 50 Sigma primes depending on the shot. But the only prime I used today was my very interesting newest addition to my kit, a 7.5mm zero distortion rectilinear cine lens from Laowa. And I'm starting to form some opinions about a lens this wide, but I'll save that for a future video. One other thing I might talk about in a future vlog is this Hollyland wireless system. I need to flag that this is not a normal part of my kit. Full transparency, I did not buy this. Hollyland sent it out to me a few weeks ago for free to test it, and this was the first shoot that I used it on. So far, it seems to be an upgrade from my cheapo Teradek, and I'll probably have some more detailed thoughts on it in a future video if I do continue to find value in it and use it on more shoots.
Reviewing the footage, and I think that my interview angle, here's the B cam, my camera was a little too low. If you look at the angle, we're kind of like looking up, and I don't love seeing the shadow under her chin. I really like the framing. I love the little highlights in the background from the neon sign, which we included just a little bit so it wasn't distracting. You weren't reading it, but you got to feel the highlights there. The reflection, that mirror, I thought was going to be a problem. I ended up loving it because it actually reflected back one of the most important products in the space, which is the bookshelf, because we're trying to highlight bookshelf, table, chandelier, and wallpaper. So like 3 out of 4 of our products we wanted to feature are in this shot. And I like that we get all this depth by opening that door and shooting back there. But yeah, I just feel like my tripod was like 5% up when it really should have been like straight, or maybe like 5% down. I tend to prefer. There's like an argument to be made that like maybe it's a little bit more empowering that if we're looking up at her, but for a corporate interview like this that I just want to be flattering, I wish that the lens was literally straight.
A little bit of drama the next morning flying back to Boston. So my media pass struck out today. According to the Delta guy at the airport, there's a list of like 20 or so large companies that are approved designators of media passes. And if you're not on that list, then you need to email Delta ahead of time to let them know that you're flying with a media pass. And he very helpfully printed out the actual rules from Delta. And in their official policy, it lists 3 different criteria actually that you can choose from to have a media pass work. Either you can email them ahead of time, or be on that list, or the top bullet point, you just have to have a media pass with your name on it, which is exactly what I have. However, he would not accept a media pass from a company that was not on that list, despite the or. And I tried to talk to his manager, but they were busy. I was waiting around for them for probably half an hour. Then I was getting close to missing my flight, so I just had to throw in the towel and pay for the bags. But he suggested that I later call Delta to explain the situation, and if I was in fact correct and he was in fact wrong, then they could probably reimburse me. So I did, and they reimbursed me for not just the difference, but actually the entire amount of the cost of the luggage. And if, unlike me, you actually took the time to print a media pass on hard plastic, then you probably won't run into any of these issues because you'll just look more legit. I was on a shoot the other day with my friend Rich. We were actually, funny enough, shooting for his client Vistaprint, and he bought his media pass years ago from Vistaprint. And the one he chose was like $30 or something, and it also includes a chip inside so that instead of scanning a QR code, you can just tap it on phones and automatically go to his website. I think getting one like this is totally worth it because there are a lot of times when the agent will have to go to their manager to, get confirmation that they can give me the discounts because they don't like how flimsy mine is. And I can probably avoid all of that skepticism if I just have one that looks legit. Personally, I think the funniest part about all of this media pass nonsense is that roughly a third of the time I tell them I have a media pass, they don't even ask to see it.